Now, part of the important strength of this movement is a network of committed activists all over the country who are dedicated to helping each other out, who really care about seeing other people who are doing good work in activism for freedom be supported in just the logistics and being embraced by a community of people who support each other. And I know a lot of people here who are getting started in activism, who are trying to find their own voice, and to be a part of this network, you don't really have to be doing anything other than helping out people around you. And our next speaker, Danny Panzella, has been an incredible example of that here in New York. And he started in 2007 with We Are Change, organizing and the Fed protests, doing independent media, helping people out for hurricane relief. He's been doing media production, he's been doing live spots, he's been doing all sorts of stuff for this movement. And just, you know, there's some people, when you've been around long enough as an activist, you can look at some people and say, you know what, that person is part of what makes this movement possible. That person really holds down their corner of what's going on. That person is someone you can depend on, who's there for fellow activists. And it's really exciting now to see that after 8 long years of activism of that kind, of supporting others, Danny is breaking out with his own project and doing the documentary, Does Pot Cure Cancer? Does anybody here know the answer to that question, by the way? Anybody? No?
Yes.
Well, yeah, gee, I would think so. Pretty informed crowd here, right? It's a question that we know the answer to, that has to be asked again and again, because there are still people in denial of this. And it is really sad to see how powerful a medicine marijuana is. It's still being opposed in this day and age. You know, you all know about seizure kids, right? Who are born into the living hell of having seizures all day long. And there's a marijuana extract that cures it, like, hey kids, here's your life back. And yet today we have thousands of legislators in America still working to keep that illegal. Now, I don't believe in hell, but if there is any kind of just hell, there's a special place for people like that. And up against them, fighting this fight, changing the paradigm, making sure that people can't deny the basic facts of this amazing plan. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Danny Panzella.
Welcome to Liberty Fest 2015. A lot of great speakers so far. So, as Adam said, I'm working on a documentary. It's called Does Pot Cure Cancer? And I have a table outside. I'd be happy to talk to you about the film and cannabis and how it's helping people with cancer. You can get one of my t-shirts. But that's not what I'm going to speak to you about today. I will be speaking again tomorrow night about cannabis. What I'm going to talk to you about today is going to probably be a little bit more offensive to a lot of you. So, one of the things that Adam didn't mention was that I've been very active as a cop watcher in New York City. Founded the Peaceful Streets New York City chapter. And so that's just kind of a little bit of background. I see a lot of new faces. It seems like the movement in the last several years has really changed. I see a handful of people that I know, but a lot of new faces, which is great. So, since a lot of you don't know me, I'm going to confess to you right now that I'm an asshole. I tend to be really obnoxious, and I can be pretty condescending at times. And so, I know, thank you. I appreciate the love anyway. It's my defense mechanism. When I'm afraid or if I feel hurt, that's the way I can respond, to defend myself. I kind of hide behind a narcissistic facade. But I'm not a true narcissist because I can recognize that, right? And a true narcissist just thinks I'm better than everybody else, and they can't even fathom that might not be the case. But this is something that I, struggle with on a daily basis. So we all have fears and anxieties and defense mechanisms that we employ to protect ourselves. And so sometimes when I use narcissism, it hurts other people. And it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to hurt other people to make ourselves feel better, right? People agree? Give me some love, because you're gonna hate me in a minute. So, some of this self-defense programming comes from social engineering. We live in a false dichotomy, kind of this paradigm that's been set up, right? So, Republican versus Democrat, left versus right, Coke versus Pepsi, McDonald's versus Burger King. You know, we kind of live in this world where it's either one thing or the other. Either you love or you hate somebody. Either they are a good person or they're a bad person. And I'm going to challenge you that that may not be the case, or it most likely, in most cases, is not the case. And, you know, because we're being taught to think in absolutes, you know, I'm very much an absolutist. So I don't want anybody to think I'm preaching at anyone. This is really the lessons that I've been learning and really focused on in my journey for maybe the past 2 years, but certainly in the last couple of months, I've come to a place where it's been really difficult for me to implement some of these things that I'm going to talk to you about. This kind of paradigm that we're living in is canonized from a very early age in fairy tales, right? There's the good witch and the bad witch, and these are the kind of the characters that we grow up with in a lot of these Disney movies. But it's interesting, though, that a lot of times the more interesting characters in pop culture or film are the ones that it's kind of not so clear, right? Batman is a really interesting character in that he does a lot of things that maybe aren't right because for the greater good, right? So it's kind of like his Batman. I mean, overall he's good, but he does a lot of things that could be considered evil. He harms people, as opposed to someone like Superman, who's more of a very, and this is a shout out to people who might be missing Comic-Con right now, and congratulations to be here instead of Comic-Con, right? So when someone hurts us, we kind of put them in that category, that person's bad. I don't like that person. We may not go so far as to call them evil, but what are some of the things that we do call them? Statists, leftists, right-wingers. He's a right-winger. He's a right-winger. He's not a real libertarian. He's a leftist. He's not a real libertarian. You want us to love other people? What are you, a leftist? Right? I mean, come on. We've got a lot of that in this movement, right? So you can insert your own favorite. Statist is one of my favorite words, right? When I disagree with somebody, you're a statist. That's how I marginalize them and shut them down. You're a statist, therefore your argument is invalid, right? Now it's almost in a way a dehumanization so that I can dismiss them and not have to confront whatever it is, whatever problem they're trying to solve with statism. But most likely they're using that statism to try and solve or to do something good, right? I'm going to quote Aldous Huxley, so this is probably going to piss a lot of people off, right? Because Aldous Huxley is one of those that in our movement is considered to be evil. And I'm sure a lot of the things he did were very evil, and a lot of the philosophies that he espoused. But he said we can only love what we know, and we can never know completely what we do not love. Love is a mode of knowledge. When we love somebody, we're willing to have the patience to take the time to understand them and to understand what their motivations are. In a more meaningful way. I mean, hopefully a lot of us are not just kind of dismissive, and that I would hope that people in our movement are at a higher level of consciousness than, you know, kind of the status quo of our society. But, you know, obviously we see a lot of the behavior sometimes doesn't always reflect that. We can then put ourselves in their shoes and empathize with how they're feeling. And then we can understand that their actions may not have really been intended to hurt us, but rather just to protect themselves. And then we can understand that they're really just like us. We're really all the same, aren't we? I mean, I think at our core, human beings are pretty much the same. We want to love and be loved, you know, at a very basic level. So what if things that we consider to be bad or evil acts are really acts done out of love, but that love has been tarnished by fear or hurt, right? I was going to use somebody as an example, but it might be a little too controversial. So instead, I'm going to use my own romantic relationship. But the principles can really be applied to any relationship with anybody. I love my partner, but I have insecurities, and those insecurities cause me to do things that hurt her at times. And if I were to allow that behavior to be taken to its fullest extent or to get out of control, it could be considered evil at some point. But why do I do these things? If I love her, why do I do things that hurt her? It's because ultimately I'm afraid of rejection. So I might tell a lie to cover something up because I'm afraid if she finds out something about myself, for instance, maybe some of my deeper, darker thoughts. I might lie to cover those up because I'm afraid if she finds out, then she will reject me. And so out of that fear, I do something bad. I tell a lie. Or then of course there's thousands of examples that we could go into. So just to really put myself out there, if I am at Starbucks, this actually just happened recently, if I'm at Starbucks and I'm feeling a little insecure about myself and I flirt a little bit with the barista to kind of get a little bit of, feminine energy back to kind of build up my self-esteem a little bit, that's wrong. I shouldn't do that. But it's not something that's, motivated by wanting to do something wrong. It's, again, trying to avoid rejection in some sense. So, when someone's wrong on the internet, and I know we're all familiar with this, right? Because we know a lot of people that are always wrong on the internet, right? Do I debate because I need to be right? Anybody who knows the body of my work, I think, knows that ultimately I want to educate people, I want to make the world a better place. And I think that's true for most of us. If you know me, and if you love me enough to be patient with my bravado, and then you know my heart is in the right place, even when my ego is ruling. Right, Josie? I saw you amening back there. All right, so in the liberty movement, there are brutalists and humanitarian libertarians who we argue about philosophy and tactics, and we split into factions, and there's some pretty nasty rhetoric going around. So I'm going to say that there are people in this movement that have a pretty bad rap, that I won't name names, that I honestly do love and respect. And I respect a lot of the body of their work, even though some of them are in this building right now. And I respect their work, even though I don't agree with everything that they have done in the past, or maybe even continue to do. And if I can approach my relationship with that person from that perspective, and not allow it to taint it and then marginalize that person, then I can have a more fulfilling and successful relationship with that person despite what their behavior is. So really what we're talking about here is empathy. And recently I got a tattoo, I don't know if you can see it, it says empathy. Now that is not because I am an empathetic guru, that is because I am probably one of the least empathetic persons that I know, naturally speaking, and it is a constant reminder for me to empathize. That's how badly I needed it, that I needed to permanently embed it on my skin, because it's not always easy to remember. And so seeing the world like this, it really removes that kind of the burden of anger, because you know what, anger and resentment and pain, it weighs us down. So loving other people and forgiving other people, it is for them, but it's more so for us. It's so that it's not harming our emotional health and not holding us back from fulfilling our potential as human beings, really. So one of the practical things that I have tried to employ to do this is to kind of do a thought experiment every time somebody hurts me or angers me. If I can center my chi enough to not react immediately, which is my long-term habits, that's what I usually do. If I can stop myself from doing that and think about this, what this person's doing right now to harm me or upset me, if they were doing it, if love was their motivation, what could it be why are they doing that? And then I can kind of step into their shoes and say, okay, I understand that you're coming from a place of fear, hurt, insecurity, whatever it is, and we can kind of disarm the anger, and then we can come to a real understanding, and that's real communication. That's where we really get to know each other and we can connect as human beings. And ultimately, like I said before, that's what human beings, that's our base need, is to connect with other human beings. Connection is really what it is. Love is connection. So now to the part that's gonna piss you guys off, probably a lot of you. What if we empathized with cops? What if when they're, and look, cops do a lot of things that absolutely are evil. It seems like the more accountability we try to hold, the more accountable we try to hold them, it seems like the more violent they get. The system is really pushing them to squash any kind of resistance. But if we really look at it, I would argue that most cops probably, even though they make the conscious choice and they are fully responsible for their behavior. That's the other thing. Don't think that empathizing with somebody removes the responsibility that they have for whatever actions they took. They are still fully responsible for what they've done. But if we think about it, I would argue most cops probably believe, even though it's a misguided belief, that they're making the world a better place, that they're protecting or they're doing the greater good for society by keeping criminals. And if some innocent people get put in prison or shot, killed even, that's an acceptable loss to keep the whole of society safe. Now obviously as libertarians, we're individualists, we do not believe that way. Like Hashem said before, it's about the individual. And so if you harm one, you harm everyone. And I think we're all quite familiar with that concept. So I think that if we approach life from this perspective of just kind of thinking, why is this person trying to hurt me? It's because they're hurt, and trying to figure out what that hurt is, and if we can get to the core of that, we can have greater connection and greater understanding and have more successful relationships, and that's in our personal lives, in our business, in our activism, whatever it is. And I think so it's not just a matter of being like a peace-loving hippie and kind of this pie-in-the-sky idea that if we all empathize, we'll have a more peaceful world. But we will. It really will. But it also benefits us in our everyday lives. So, thank you very much for listening to me. And this is just kind of the personal journey that I've been on. And I hope that somebody found some value in this. And if you want to hear about cannabis and cancer, stick around. I'll be speaking tomorrow evening about that, and you can always come talk to me outside at the booth. And pick up a t-shirt. All the t-shirts go to fund the film. Thank you.
I hope you caught all that. That was very important as a new perspective to share with this movement. Was it not, ladies and gentlemen, Danny Panzella?